Cash receipts in the current fund account for the period of January 1 to January 31, 2020 were $2,652,014.65. Cash disbursements in the current fund account for the month of January totaled $2,257,631.79. And the cash balance in the current fund account for this period totaled $13,149,308.53. Cash receipts in the water utility account for the period of January 1 to January 31st were $232,106.96. Cash disbursements in the water utility account for the month of January totaled $408.69. And the cash balance in the water utility account for this period was $3,971,884.44, submitted by our treasurer, Sherry Bowler.
Thank you. Okay, so we're on to approval of the minutes.
I have January 13th, 2020 regular meeting minutes.
Is there anybody already read the minutes?
Approved.
I wasn't at that meeting, so I have to abstain.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Maskell?
Yes.
Mayor Davis?
Yes.
Ordinance 2020-01, bond ordinance authorizing the acquisition of 2 trolleys by and for the Borough of Beach Haven in the County of Ocean, State of New Jersey, appropriating $325,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of 309,000 bonds or notes to finance part of the cost thereof. Final reading.
This is final reading, so the floor will be open to public discussion. At the last meeting, we did have questions, and I had the committee here, and they do have answers to a lot of the questions. So if the committee somebody from the committee would like to come forward, and then we'll open it to public comment, and after, at that point, I think it'd be beneficial if you directed your comments to the committee, because they have put a great deal of time and effort in this and know more of the answers than those of us on council do, I think.
Jay Cranmer, 509 Dock Road. Our committee got started last summer after listening for many months, maybe years, about the parking problems in town. Parking problems are very real for 10 weeks. I've lived here for 79 years, and I can tell you that we've always had parking problems in this town. But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be solved. There are some of us who decided that we ought to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. So we began looking at what the solutions could be. Finding more parking spaces is one of them, and the borough has been working on that, and there's probably 35 spaces have been added on Bay Avenue, or will be, in time for the summer season. There'll be other parking added. We've looked at other solutions, buying land for parking lots, but now you're talking millions of dollars. That money doesn't exist readily. We looked then, starting last August, about 6 months ago, and I would add that there's been a lot of criticism that this has been rushed through. Well, I can tell you that in business, 6 months is a lifetime. If you're in government, maybe it's just the beginning of a multiple-year decision-making process. But businesses like to stay in business year after year. So we do our investigations, we do our homework, and we come back with solutions. At the last meeting, questions were raised about why don't we lease? Well, we did some investigations on leasing. We talked to the township. To lease, with one program we've investigated, would cost Beach Haven $70,000 a year. The business community would not support it because there would be no advertising permitted in the vehicles provided to us. We talked to people in Tom's River, and they pursued leasing. Their program for 2 years was an absolute disaster. They leased buses that had maintenance problems. Last year the bus sat on the side of the road, I gathered, for a couple of months. Through our investigation, buying the trolleys seems to be the most viable solution. We have talked to the company that provides them. These are handicapped accessible vehicles. At the end of 1 year, assuming the vehicles are still in good condition and don't have excessive mileage, which they wouldn't because we're talking about a local route, about 75 cents on the dollar would be recaptured through sale of those vehicles. If the cost is $300,000, I'm using round numbers, we would get the borough would get at least $200,000 back, if not $225,000. The business community would be putting up at least $150,000 this first year. That's the commitment. $75,000 would be the cash in, with the obligation would continue for 2 more years. The business community money would pretty much cover the balance of that, and the borough should be out virtually nothing at all. The borough could be out $25,000, $30,000. One would have to sit down and calculate it all. The business community would be out all of its money. If the business community has done their homework, and we are willing to take that risk. The questions were raised about where the trolleys could be stored in the winter. There is a possibility in the new municipal garage. If that doesn't work out because of other priorities, we'll look for other places. We could store the buses on the mainland at inexpensive storage spaces, or we could simply buy covers for them to keep the salt air off them and prevent the erosion problem that was mentioned at the last meeting by Scott Cunningham. We're in a mode right now where these vehicles, if ordered shortly, will be in play by Memorial Day, and they'll be here all summer. The numbers that we put together for on the economics of this did not include any additional revenue that would be gained by leasing these vehicles in the off-season for weddings, venues, whatever people want to use them for. That would generate additional income over and above what we've already put together. We've looked at routes. Brian, you may want to say something about that. We've come up with a tentative route that really serves the whole community. We get down as far south as Liberty or Pelham, serving the residents in the southern half of town. We have talked to a lot of people in this town who said, we can't wait because we don't want to drive into town in the summertime. We'll love to take the trolley. These are long-term residents that we know and all of you know. Let's see. Brian, anything else you want to add that I may have missed, or Steve?
Come to the microphone.
Sure. Steve Steiner, 521B Amber Street. Basically, what it comes down to is if this is not a success, and we have to sell the vehicles, and we sell the vehicles for, as you say, 75 cents on the dollar, we're talking about $225,000, and the rest of the money that has been put in by the business community makes the borough whole. You will not spend 1 penny of taxpayer money, which seems to be the big objection to this. If you lease, there are 2 programs. One costs $150,000, one costs $70,000. If you lease, you are guaranteed to spend that amount of money, of taxpayer money, with no hope of getting it back. Third, over the course of the 9-year program, the entire upfront cost that is being fronted by the bond issue of the borough is paid back completely. The taxpayers are not out 1 penny, and you own 2 trolleys. It's as simple as that. And the route is pretty terrific. And we're very, very excited about this. And we're excited that because of the public-private partnership, we are able to create this wonderful program for Beach Haven at no cost in the long haul to any taxpayer.
Just wrapping up, at this point, without even having the bond ordinance approved, we have $125,000 in commitments from the business community. Our target was $150,000, but I think we'll wind up getting at least to $175,000 this year, as soon as the ordinance is passed and people know with certainty that this will go through. Of the 125 committed, people in this room have committed to half of that.
Any other comments from the committee at this point? Are there any questions from council before I open the floor to everybody else?
You're not going to charge for ridership.
That is correct.
Yeah, that is correct, and one of the alternatives we looked at for leasing would require charging every passenger on the trolley $2 a piece, which is going to discourage use of it.
Well, another question. If you lease, obviously you're getting somebody else's trolley who leased it for a year or two ahead of time. How much, would there be a lot of mileage on those leases?
That would be one route, and it's not one we would recommend because
I see.
of the concern with the basic capability of the vehicle, the maintenance requirements and so forth. We had talked with the township, and if we got involved with them somehow, with their shuttles, it's a totally different vehicle, it's smaller, it's 14 people instead of the 22 that we have. It's just not the same thing, but it is not the special public transportation mode that we envisioned for the borough of Beach Haven. Beach Haven has always been different. We've always tried to do things better. We haven't necessarily spent a lot of money to do that, but we've always looked at ways of serving the citizens in this town better than anybody else, and that's why Beach Haven is still the queen city and always will be, as long as we have people like you all who are willing to do your homework, look at it, ask the hard questions, get answers that you find acceptable, and move forward.
Another question. If you lease, you will not have all that advertising, all their supporters, am I correct?
No, if you go the leasing route, we can't get the business commitments because there's no advertising permitted in any of the vehicles.
I have a couple questions. So when you're saying that there's no, public kick-in after the businesses have the donations, this is my concern, is that for a small business, the smallest amount of donation is $1,000. And in addition to that, it's $250 per year for the 3-year cycle. So you're talking one business for $1,750, but they're not getting any advertising rights. The only thing that they're getting is a sign in front of their store saying that they support the trolley. So that for me is hard because a lot of these small businesses, that's a big chunk of money for them. When you're advertising in the sandpaper, you're getting a more output of people reading that. So I'm concerned for the smaller businesses and the donor contribution, and they're not getting as much advertisement as for the buy-in.
All right, a couple responses to that, Jamie. Derek, I apologize. There are a lot of us who advertise in a lot of different mediums down here, and one of the questions is how much value you get advertising a 100-page paper in the summertime, as opposed to other medium like on the shuttles that run up and down the island or in these trolleys.
Right.
Secondly, in terms of the small people, we will look at how we can include them. These trolleys will have a television screen in them with a continual scroll of names of businesses. I think you have a good point there, and I think we can incorporate the names of the smaller donors in those communications. It's a fair comment, no
Right.
problem.
The second contribution is for $5,000,
Yes.
and then that allows them to have their business on the screen inside. But then also, there's a 3-year fee also for $500. So
That's correct.
this is a lot of money for these businesses running on a 10-week season. And I know that you've said that you've already reached $125,000 from the larger businesses, but I'm concerned that when you gave me these figures, you're anticipating 15 donors, 10 contributors at $5,000, 8 sponsors at $10,000, and 2 founders at $25,000. I just don't know if we would have the smaller businesses.
Well, we already have half of them, and $5,000 for adding the extra hundreds of dollars to it, it's not that much of a problem when you look at marketing down here. If you look at what it costs you to advertise in the sandpaper every week, you'll spend a whole lot more than that and not get the same exposure.
Okay. They also will have rights to utilize or rent themselves the trolley for personal events. For instance, like the Seashell does,
Yes.
you know, millions of dollars a year in weddings, and they would be able to use that, correct?
That's correct. All the businesses who are contributors will have the first priority, and after that, we can look at having the trolleys available for other people. We have to have certain days' notice and so forth to get the drivers lined up. All the drivers are certified. These vehicles are handicapped access, and incidentally, none of the numbers we've talked about include us being able to, in subsequent years, getting some grants. And we know that having ADA compliant vehicles will put us in a position of getting some grants elsewhere here in the state. And I think that one of the other points to be made is that if you can ride the trolley, you don't have to take your car to town. We help relieve some of the parking problems in town. I listen to people all the time talking about going around the block 3-4 times, whether it's to go to the drugstore or park the car to go to a restaurant or whatever. This frees up parking spaces.
One other question. Chick, I know you made this trolley stops as you went along. Is this longer than what we mentioned before, like 20 minutes, 25 minutes? Does this get to be like more like a half an hour now, or?
This particular route, and
Yeah.
again, it's tentative.
Right.
Nothing's in stone,
Right.
but this is basically, it starts at about 12th Street,
Right.
Beach Haven, down to the Liberty Avenue, which takes you down to Mordecai Marina or the Coast Guard Station.
Mm-hmm.
The stops are in town, down in the Maritime District, Pearl Street Tennis Courts, Little Egg Yacht Club, Coast Guard Station, then it crosses over, coming back up somewhere in the vicinity of Berkeley or Ocean Street. A stop by the Ingleside and the Seashell. And then coming down Center Street at Center and Beach, and then onto the Boulevard at 2nd Street, I think at 8th Street. When we're on the Boulevard, and all of the stops and the route is coordinated with our borough police.
Okay.
So we've been in contact with Jimmy Markowski, and it'll all be regulated by him for safety reasons, of course, and regulations. But we're also, like I said, it's not like it's a work in progress.
Sure.
So we have to be flexible with it. It basically runs 4.5 miles, and it's roughly 40 minutes loop. So with 2 trolleys, you're looking at about a 20-minute wait between trolleys, but there's also an app that would have access to follow the trolley
Meeting.
en route. So you would know what your wait time is or where they are and where the next stop will be.
Okay.
There are copies of the map in the back of the room, if anybody wants to see.
Go ahead.
Any other questions from council? Okay, I'll open the floor to the public.
Yeah, I have one more question, excuse me. Are you going to put signs up on each street, for example, of where the trolley is going? So, for example, on Ingleside, it's going to be there, and I think I'm seeing here in front of Tucker's, so there will be a sign here that says trolley stop?
We haven't gotten this far
Okay.
to contemplate, what we do as far as signage. And while I'm standing here, Jamie, just to address your advertising question, obviously the goal is to have everybody be included in the opportunity to be a part of the trolley, but I don't think any of the contributors are looking at this as we're paying X for Y versus an advertising dollar. It's really just to support the community. And, I've been in a small business, working by myself, and there's been plenty of opportunities where I had to send people away because I couldn't afford to do it. And I think what you're seeing is the larger businesses sort of paying it forward and saying, look, we can afford to shoulder more of this, and we'll go to work on making sure that every business of every size can participate in some way.
Yes?
Colleen Lambert, 115 8th Street. Gentlemen, how many people does the trolley hold? at one time?
22.
22. Okay. I understand the concept, and I don't disagree with it at all. I do still have a few concerns, and first of all, as a resident of 8th Street, my number one parking problem is when I go to the Surflight usually. I drop my gang off, and it's not uncommon for me to have to park up on Amber, Angleside, across the boulevard. But if I were to try to take the trolley, I would miss the show. And I think a lot of people are in the same situation in that, and this is where you may need to adjust the route, because anything that we want to do to get us up to the center of town, by the time you take the trolley, you're way out of your way. So that, to me, is not a practical solution. The other thing I'm curious about is, did you look at minibuses? Because I called my old school district today, and I talked to the transportation director, and I said, just out of curiosity, I said, how much does a handicap or ADA compliant minibus cost? And she said $65,000. And in that respect, they hold 19, and you could paint them. You go get the advertising and all that on it. So I would just, I'm just thinking in terms of, you could actually get 3 of those for less than we would be paying for the 2 trolleys. I know the trolleys are cool. I know they have the historic and all that vibe. I understand that. I was just thinking in terms of, until we know what the ridership is, that, possibly, if you went with 2 even, that would be a fraction of the cost. To cut the time down, because I'm thinking if it's raining or I'm standing outside on a stinking hot day too, if I'm going to be standing around for 20 minutes, if we could cut the time down, that would be great. And my other suggestion would be to somehow or other, now I know if you cut out the south end of town, you're going to get a lot of complaints there because those people want to be serviced too. But for the practicality of getting to the downtown businesses, once you take that long loop, anybody who's trying to park on this end of town and get to, the surf light, the restaurants, you've just made their trip a lot longer. So, thank you.
So just in response to some of the points that you raised, the one thing that we learned, we went to visit with Long Beach Township because obviously they're several years into their shuttle program, and the one thing they were clear about is you don't know anything about this until you put it into play. And your points about where to go, the frequency, how many we need, is going to be something we're going to have to learn and figure out. And we're not presenting this as the final best solution, just as something to move forward. But we did contemplate many different options as far as vehicles, and you could go with many versions, whether it's a minibus or shuttle. And really, the committee came to the position that if we're going to do it, we want to differentiate the borough from everything else that's going on the island and really try to step up from a marketing perspective. When we conveyed and surveyed families, they said, I've never been on the shuttle before, or I used it once, but the novelty of the trolley will get folks engaged in the idea of at least riding it once or twice as a family activity. And we just thought that trade-off was worth the additional expense. Only time and trying is going to tell for sure, but we did contemplate the lower expense items.
May I add one thing? And this is one thing, just very simply, because we've said that this route is a proposed route. If you just add one more thing where you cut through town on the way down and then cut through town on the way back again, that solves your problem completely. And it's just a simple adjustment in the route, which is certainly feasible.
That's interesting, because you adjust it to when the shows were at the surf light, knowing that there's a lot of people.
John Harvey, 211 2nd Street. I guess the question, I have a number of questions and some information to share, but I guess the question is what confidence do we have to be providing a 9-year trolley program when things like ridership and financial risk and things are outstanding? Why not, and it goes back to Brian's point, why not do it for a pilot for a year and see how it goes? Find out what your ridership is, find out what the complaints are and things like that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the financial responsibility that this group has related to this. What you're in effect doing is taking about $325,000 in taxpayer money and signing taxpayers up for that bill with a lot of ifs. Okay? One question I have for the committee, when you say the business is committed, is that a contract for 3 years? They're
Yes.
signing a contract for all 3 years?
Yes.
And the default, if they aren't able to pay that, is? Business goes out, business struggles, we have a hurricane, it's a remedy from a legal standpoint?
Those are risks. That's the risk.
So, a number of different risks financially. First of all, the minimal cost, if this doesn't work after 1 year, minimum, Jay, you first time had said it was, they pay back 60 or 80%. So your minimum cost, regardless of how this works, is anywhere from $61,800 to $123,600. First year, there's not enough ridership, that's what your cost is. The sponsorships, don't forget, the program is three-year cycles. So we've got some contracts which protect us for that $325,000. But what about the second 3-year cycle and the next 3-year cycle? Suppose things are tougher and you don't get the money to pay back the borough for the $325,000 bond. Okay? And these are the three-year cycles. I asked, and I guess I'll ask the three of you, Nancy, you, Tom, and Chuck voted for this, and my question was, what's your confidence, any insight you have that boosts your confidence that this is going to be successful to invest $325,000 in taxpayer money?
I have a lot of confidence in,
Based on what though?
Based on the fact that I think we have some very successful business people that have come up with this plan. And I don't think that I think they have a lot of confidence in this. I think they know a lot more about business than I do. I think that right now, I think our finances here in the borough are very, very good. We're better than pretty much most towns. I mean, we have a triple A rating so that's not bad. We have a very high surplus. Our debt has been steadily decreasing, and our surplus has been going up. So we're narrowing the margin between our debt and our surplus. Right. We have still money coming in from FEMA, which we hope to get, and I think that if we don't take a chance occasionally, and I have great confidence in these people, they understand business. If the 3-year cycle, it doesn't look like it's paying it, we can still sell these trolleys and get out from under this with very little cost. And I think
$60,000 to $120,000.
Well, I don't know about that because
that's the 60 to 80%.
I don't think so.
You ignored some of the other information we provided, Mr. Harvey. First, we said 75%.
You said 60 to 80 at the last meeting.
Pick a number, John. It doesn't matter.
Say 75.
John, we'll never convince you, but you're ignoring the fact that the cars can be resold for, take the average, 70%. And the contributions from the business community get added on top of that, and that closes the gap, so the cost to the borough probably will be zero. If the borough goes with a leasing program, the cost is $70,000 out the window, gone, never recovered.
And if we go with a 1-year pilot?
That's $70,000.
I'm not saying buying those, I'm saying buying the vans that Colleen was talking about for 1 year and see how it goes. Because I get some ridership information that is questionable.
Well, it is questionable.
Yeah, it is highly questionable. But
Can I give you some information on ridership?
Yeah.
So as recent as today, I went back to talk to Long Beach because they did run a route the first 3 years that went down Delaware and through the Marina District and up Pearl. And the only reason why they discontinued it wasn't because of lack of ridership. It was actually highly used. It was just the time in which it added to the overall route and had people on the south end of the island waiting too long. So it's clear that there was demand and usage previously. So this isn't something new. The shuttle system already serviced some of this area already and really was used in a big way.
So let me ask you a question in part responding to Steve and Jay's comments. What insight do you have on ridership for this program?
All I know was about their 3-year experience when Long Beach was riding a similar.
Well, Long Beach is a very different community based on the size.
No,
It was
for
like
this
giving a
route.
9 square mile example last time.
They were running the shuttle down Delaware through the
Oh,
Marina.
the same
This-
route.
Yeah.
Got it. So let me go back to, and any question you have about the ridership information, I'd certainly request you. Chuck, you said I spoke to a couple of neighbors. Steve, you said you spoke to some people. I heard you spoke to some people. I had everybody's business people. I had big business. I've owned small businesses. But the one key thing is that understand what the problem is. What are you trying to solve for here? You know, somebody down in, by the Coast Guard station has already parked their car for vacation. You're not freeing up any spots, and they're probably gonna ride a bike. You know, why not promote a bicycle program here? So anyway, I had suggested to you 2 or 3 meetings ago, the whole idea of 60 minutes and identify the problem before you go about solving it. And the issue here is ridership. There is no proof of concept that there's gonna be ridership for this program. So we did go out and do a survey, which I suggested you guys do last time. We've got a mailing list of about 700 people now. We've got a Facebook page of about 800 people, and we sent it out. And as of noon, we had 233 responses from those people. The highlights, and I'll leave this for you, would like it to be a matter of public record. So let me give you the quick reports. If you have another survey that's more credible, put it up here. 3 questions to be asked. Which of the following applies to respondents? Full-time Beach Haven resident, Beach Haven non-resident taxpayer, totally neglected in the past by this committee. But out of the 223 responses as of noon, just over 94% were taxpayers. Okay? That's some of the categories, and I'll share all the comments and backup information. How likely are you to use the proposed trolleys during the summer? Very likely and likely was about 13%. Unlikely and very unlikely was about 76%.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
How likely are you to use the proposed trolleys during the summer?
Okay.
You know, in this description, didn't you? I gave it, I took it off what they shared. And then secondly, after that, we said, if you are, how often would you anticipate using the free trolley during the summer? And about 10% said multiple times during the week or weekly. Nobody said daily, and rarely or never was over 75%. So we're going to keep the survey going through the vote on this. So hopefully we'll have 400 or 500 responses. But I'll give you each a copy of that. And the point is, why with no insight on the level of ridership would you commit $325,000 of taxpayer money over a 9-year program? And I would say everybody's good business, they did a good job, they got together. But you've got a situation, well, what's the problem? It hasn't been defined. It's not been defined.
That's not true.
Well, I disagree with you, John. I think I think we do know what the problem is, and
I know it's parking and what is this going to solve?
I don't really think there's that big of a parking problem in Beach Haven. So, but I think this solves a lot of people. You have to realize that I probably wouldn't use a trolley that much because I ride my bike everywhere. And I think many people that live in their own houses do. But when you rent to people that don't have bikes and don't know the town, I think these people will use the trolley. When you have day trippers down here, they will use the trolley. I think if we don't try something, I think we have very little to lose. If we don't try something, we just fall apart. There was a lot of, when the township started their trolley, their bus program or whatever, their shuttle program, there was a lot of people that didn't think it was going to be any good, and it was slow taking off. But now it's packed. And they gave you free rides initially. Now they're charging for the rides, and that hasn't slowed down the participation in the use of these shuttles. I think that we need to be proactive. We just can't sit there and wait for the problem to get worse. I think we need to look at it. I feel very confident in our business owners that have been very successful in their businesses, by the way, when they say that they can provide this service for us at virtually no cost. Basically, it is a public-private partnership. And when you have a public-private partnership, you have to go out and bond. I mean, it doesn't mean we have to spend that money. We're getting money from them. The money will be coming back into the borough. I think we have to have a little confidence, and we can't just sit there and say, this isn't going to work. I mean, obviously, there are things like, if you had another giant storm, there are things that could create problems for this. But you just can't think that way. You've got to think positively. And your taxes haven't gone up. Do you understand that when you pay your tax bill, 1/3 of it is municipal, 1/3 is school, and 1/3 is county. Your municipal taxes have not gone up in 2 years, and they went up very little after Sandy. So so I just feel that we need to take a chance and do this. Thank you. Somebody else,
Just
please.
a quick response, What, do you want to go?
I just have something real quick.
Go ahead.
So just coincidentally, from a timing perspective, learned today that Southern Ocean County Chamber has shared that they had 6,000 riders on the ferry system coming over from Tucker and looking to add another boat. This route would actually be able to pick up those riders and get them through town off of Taylor. So just another enhancement to our community that would support the businesses and allow us to
They had
continue.
6,000 riders you're expecting, or
They had 6,000, that's why they're going to invest in a second boat.
Yeah, you talk about the 9-year program. What happens after 3 years? Well, after 3 years, you actually have $110,000 coming from the business community that has not been spent, that can go after the first 3 years, which is really only 2 years in, because that's when it's paid after the 24 months. So that $110,000 can retire basically a third of the bond after 3 years. After the second cycle, a third of the bond gets retired. After the third cycle, the third of the bond gets retired. So therefore, after 3 years, and you've got a third of the bond retired, and you decide you want to sell the trolleys, you're not going to be out anything at all, you know. And the other thing is that the problem with the survey is when you put it on a Facebook page and a website where you're referring to the project as Trolley Folly, what that does is it manipulates the people that look at it to take your point of view rather than taking something objectively and actually answering it. So those people that responded negatively are already of your point of view, and many people that would see something Trolley Folly that said, oh, well, I don't even want to respond to that because I think that's a foolish way to call it. So therefore, you're manipulating the figures that you're bringing in by calling it negatively before you even allow them to take the survey.
Can somebody else speak?
Right. If you can respond to me, I can respond to a fair statement.
John, this is not, we don't want to get into back and forth responses.
No, a fair statement. Trolley Folly was not posted until 230 respondents had been received, and we looked at the results.
Okay, thank you.
And it is a trolley.
Can somebody else get up
It
and
is
speak,
not.
please? Anybody else want to speak?
Kitty?
Kitty Snyder, 120 Berkeley. I just came tonight because I didn't even know it was on the agenda. I've heard about the trolley and, I've heard some people for it and some people, many people, of course, who subscribe to Enrage Beach Haven against it. But I think, from what I heard tonight, I think it's worth giving it a try. I kind of agree with Nancy. I've said for years, Bill can attest to this, that I've always said we don't really have a traffic problem because it's only for 6 weeks out of the year, basically. And I saw you make a face when Nancy said that, and I know where you're coming from, but we really don't have a giant.
I don't know, I agree with you. I don't
Oh,
think
good, because I was like, I know it's a pain in the neck when you have to drive
No,
around 6 times,
I
but.
agree with Nancy on that. I don't really think that.
Well, I wasn't sure, because I
think New York has a parking problem. You can't find a
No, and
parking spot in
also,
a.
right, and I went up to my mom's the other night, took her to dinner, it was raining, we
No, I
drove.
agree with you.
And I had to drop her off at the door, 93 years old, and I couldn't find a spot in Collingswood. It's a very busy, very successful area, and I had to park 3 blocks away, and I thought, all these businesses on a Tuesday night are bustling, and if they had 1 million parking spaces, they'd be going out of business. So that's number one. Number two, I think anything that keeps people that are drinking off the streets is a great idea. Not everyone can get on a bike. My mother couldn't get on a bike. Not everybody's able to ride a bike. If you're sick, I can ride a bike, but not everyone can. You can't say, oh, just get on your bike. You're in great shape. Not everyone is. People can't pedal, whatever. There's 1 million different reasons. I think that for every single meeting, you're either, at one meeting you're saying there's such a traffic problem, we've got to solve it, you're all crazy, you're doing this, and at the next meeting you're saying there's no problem, and you're going out on a limb and you're trying to come up with the solution to a problem. I know you can't have it both ways, so I think it's a great idea to give it a try as long as we can, from what you're saying, and I certainly trust Jay's business prowess to we're not gonna lose money on it. And I think it should be pretty. I think we can use it for celebrate the season, to extend the season, which we've all been talking about for years and years. It's just, I think it's a great idea, and I apologize.
Thank you. I think we have extended the season, actually, I think significantly. And I mean, it's amazing to me in January and February to see as many people in restaurants and out and about, and it's amazing. I really don't believe there's a parking problem. I never have. I live in an area where from early in the morning until 6 at night, I have a parking problem where I live. If I move my car, I won't get another parking spot back. But in the evenings, I don't have a problem. So we all have our times when it's difficult. But I think this would help in the respect that less people would be driving around looking for parking spots, and it would basically be good for the environment. Instead of having a whole lot of cars driving around, we have less. I'm still going to ride my bike. I'd like to ride the trolley just for the fun of it, and to take my granddaughter on the trolley and that sort of thing. But I think people would like it, and we do know that there is a need for something like this, because when the township did run the routes that are back in the back areas, they were full. They were full, and it just took up too much time for them, and so they said, no, we can't do that anymore. So I think it's a benefit.
I'd like to say one thing. I don't think you can give any business 1 year. No business. Everyone knows, and you start a business, the first year is just, you kind of write it off and then you move on. 1 year is unreasonable.
Thank you. Next person. Who else wants to come forward and speak? Anybody?
Cookie Messick, Virginia Messick, 19th 6th Street. I was just looking at the route, and I know I said this last time, and it was about the designated stops. And you said that the up and down, the regular island trolley will also be having to do designated stops because of safety reasons that the police are saying they should. And the problem I see is having designated stops.
Cookie, can you speak in the
microphone? I'm sorry. The problem I see is having designated stops. Because if you're, and I'm a realtor, the people I rent to come to this town so they can walk. And that, the distance, just like we do in the summer. So, but if you are going to take it and you're on the south end, by the time you go to the stop, if you're over, it's a long ways to walk to go to the stop. And is it really necessary to have designated stops and not maybe somebody that's walking down the street sees the trolley and could leave it down?
Good. What are you addressing? Chip.
My opinion, like, I hear what you're saying, but I know from talking to Jim Markowski that it created a hazard when at every 50 feet, 100 feet, 500 feet.
Okay, is that what the other one
somebody's
does
flagging it
with it at this time? They haven't changed it right?
Theirs
they just
is
stopped
on
it.
response, and you
All
can
right.
pick it up, but that is going to be changed this year
Mhm.
in Beach Haven. Whereas he's going to have
Just
certain...
in Beach Haven, not in the
Beach Haven,
township.
right. The rest of the
Because
island,
I think
you
that
can
part of the
flag it down.
reason people like it is they can go out and just jump on it when it
Well,
comes.
a
and
lot of
have it
people
out.
with the Long Beach Township shuttle use the app.
Yeah,
So
but
the app
but
is a
every
help.
kid from the mainland use that app too, and every kid on this island. And that's the only problem I had with that system was if you've been in the middle of a couple flash mobs, as I have on my street and at the 7-Eleven and any place else, those are not people coming here to give business to the town. Those are the kids who if I was the parent with a teenager over on the mainland, I would send them on the bus because I don't have to come pick them up. So that was, and we never addressed that with the township in terms of what it's done. Have you seen any of those mobs? And this one created.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
But I do believe that Jimmy has addressed that. Didn't they put something last year?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
well, I had
There's a
nobody could
curfew
come
in
to
the-
my street on 4th of July because there was too many drunk people that the cops had to deal with. It's not their fault. you know. But I'm just saying, it alarmed a number, I had calls from any number of tenants saying, what is going on? Because they had moved their center from Taylor Avenue, and those poor people that live on Taylor. And I'm just wondering if the town, this is off the subject, can address that at some point.
Well, you know, we can talk to Jim about that. That surprises me because because of all these mobs, we have closed the beach to kids after 6 o'clock or 8 o'clock, I think it is. And basically, what I understand and what I've heard, and I've heard this from the township, that these mobs have moved north. So, 14th Street, yeah, they have moved north. So they shouldn't be coming down 6th Street and causing you problems.
Well, it's not me I'm worried about.
Right.
I'm talking about the general complexion of the town, the people who I rent to.
Right.
Through my business and coming down, and this is, I went to the 7-Eleven one night, and I could not pull in the parking lot. An off-duty police officer, and they would not let my car into the parking lot, and this was not late at night because they're all under curfew.
Right, right.
This is all 4th of July, it was after the fireworks, our whole street sits in the street. I went in the house, I could hear it starting, and they went down 7 and came around, and there was more than 100, and a lot of them did hit the beach.
Right.
And when I just called to say, you know, nobody's doing anything, but I thought you should know, there was no one available to come do anything.
Well,
about
4th
it.
of July is an
Yeah, but I'm saying
aberration,
in
it's
general,
crazy.
that's when the
Yeah.
problems are gonna happen at the busy times.
Right.
But, I mean, my whole thing about, I would get on it with my grandkids just to ride around. Can we do, how about like Key West when we, you know how we do, you know, we do the historic tours? Can some of that go on?
What we said with the wedding season, but also how.
Yeah, but I'm saying the same volunteers that walk the people around town, maybe could ride on the trolley and
Yes,
talk
that is
about
certainly-
town.
yes.
Well, the intent is to have a historic, make it available for the historic tours in the meeting. The trolley would only run from 3:30 in the afternoon to 11:30 at night.
Right, which would not address the drunk people, which someone mentioned earlier.
Well, 3:30 and.
Right, I'm saying 10:30,
at night.
in other words, they're.
Yeah,
you
for
know,
the serious people that go to restaurants, but the intent is also to make it available for historical tours one day a week.
Right, okay, I mean, these are just things that no one mentioned that would add to the whole thing. I'm betwixt and between, and I'm all for this kind of thing, normally. And I just think, knowing the people that I rent to now, they're different than the ones I rented to 20 years ago. And I don't think they're gonna do this. The people that I rented to 20 years ago might be interested in it. But if they have to, if it's this long between a stop and they're down in the south part of town, it's not gonna happen.
You know, again, if you look at it, the entire route is 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Half the route, which would take you from one end of the town to the center of town, is 10 minutes. If you go to the north end of the town and you come to the center of town, it's 10 minutes. And you're gonna have 2 trolleys. So cut that in half. So when you think about the route, if you do the entire route, and very few people are gonna do the entire route unless you're going home. But if you're trying to get to the center of town, it's 10 minutes. If you went from the south, 10 minutes, get to the north, it's a 10-minute. And with 2 trolleys, it cuts that in half.
Yeah, it's not the timing, it's
I'm just
the
saying that-
stops. People will walk 4 blocks.
We will work with the police on the number of stops and take into account your comments, which
Yeah.
are valid. Thank
No,
you.
I'm not being a naysayer, it's just, I know who I deal with, and you do too, in the restaurant.
And we've
Yeah.
also talked, like, we discussed, because of the length, going to South Beach Haven. But if we're at the Coast Guard station or Little Egg or up on Atlantic, possibly, like I said, none of this stuff is set in stone. But possibly down at the Coast Guard station, there's gonna be a bike rack there at the stop. So you can ride your bike there, lock your bike, ride the trolley. So we've discussed many options, and like I said, we're pretty flexible with making this thing work.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? Yes.
Jim Vogel, 528 Dock Road. For over 2 years now, we have been beaten over the head by a certain element about the lack of parking in town. This is showing some initiative to help that problem. I applaud the Borough Council and the business community. I think we've got some of our best and brightest minds on this, and it's a minimal risk. Let's do it.
Anybody else like to get up and speak? You need to state your name and
Jen
address.
Tomlinson, 306 South Bay Ave, Beach Haven. Some agree we have a traffic problem, some don't. But I also sat here 2 summers ago when we had the wish list going of what kinds of things the town wanted. And Sherry was saying that, it's not post-Sandy. It's not like we need to stop spending. And although this could be, a minimal risk, I'm going back and forth. Yes, it helps business owners, but it also does go to the taxpayers. And 9 years later, we all have cars in this town. 9 years later, with the salt, it's not a really sellable item. And green, we are a short town. Like, if you're gonna ride your bike to the stop, why not ride the bike the rest of the way? If we're gonna ban plastic bags, why not bike? Why not put in better curbs and biking? And just a thought.
Well, I'm all for biking myself, because I'm a big biker, and certainly we've been looking at different ways to create more bike lanes and that sort of thing. But you still have to think there are people that are handicapped out there, and there are elderly people that don't ride bikes. I'm elderly, but I still ride my bike.
But saying they're gonna bike to the stop is not really, if you're gonna bike to the stop, you may as well bike the whole way.
Well, I think most people, I don't think people are gonna bike to the stop. I don't think that's an issue. And I think you have to, there's flexibility here. I mean, if you start doing this and you see that maybe you need another stop, or maybe there's a way somebody can on West Avenue, for example, where there's a long stretch, or on the stretch between Pelham and South Atlantic, that somebody could raise their hand to get picked up. I think, we can build some flexibility into this. Because I think we do have to think about elderly people and infirm people that just can't, it's hard. I'm dealing with a sick husband now who I have to, get him in the car, get a wheelchair out, and it's quite difficult. So I think we do have to think about these types of people, and I think this might help some of these people. These are ADA compliant trolleys, which is really good. So it'll help a lot of those people.
But
go ahead.
sorry, I just want to say on the bike rentals and we also have businesses that rent bikes, not the ADA, but just thinking about both. I get the business owner end and the taxpayer end.
Okay.
Okay.
Quick question, how old do you have to be to ride unaccompanied by an adult?
Well, how old would you have to be to do what?
For a kid to get on, the trolley without being accompanied by an adult?
We probably do what the town, what, I don't know, what do you think?
We'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we thought, I don't know what the township requires for that. I have no idea.
Yeah, I was curious, because you say, send the kids down in the corner and go
But
right around.
don't you think most kids aren't going to want to say, hey, I'm going to tell my 5-year-old granddaughter or 6-year-old by the summer to go get on the trolley? I don't think. But I don't know.
12-year-olds?
Maybe.
12?
10.
10?
I don't
I mean, back in the day.
Well, I was riding my bike all the way around town when I was 8 or 9.
Right, I'm saying, back in the day, all the kids could walk around town and nobody felt like they had to drive them anywhere. Now you're afraid some of,
I mean, I think once you're in 3rd or 4th grade, I mean, you're pretty, you know the town and But I guess we need to discuss that. Any other questions? Yes.
All the comments from the audience, I can't document because.
Yeah, because I'm sorry, again, every comment, it's really important because this is being taped and that people come up and speak in the microphone, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, Ann Smith, 204 2nd Street. I never studied finance, but how does this work as far as who's handling the money in the borough and making sure everything is collected from the businesses? And I mean, does Mr. Crowner write a check and give it to Sherry? I don't know.
Well, we have our CFO here, so she can answer your questions better than I.
know, if this is like a business we're running, I just wondered how that works, Sherry.
We're not essentially.
Yeah, can you just pick that mic up and speak into it?
Thank you. We're not essentially collecting the money through the borough. The money would be collected through the Long Beach Island Foundation, the Long Beach Island Chamber of Commerce, because for us, we're not setting a fee for the service. This is considered more of a donation. So the chamber would be collecting and administering the funds, and then they would be essentially donating that money to the town for this specific purpose.
We looked into that because we were curious about these questions, and we checked with Long Beach Township to see how they do it, because these are donations, and yeah. And I have to say, Sherry Bowler, our CFO, she's done an amazing job in dealing with our financial situation here during Sandy, after Sandy, and it was a mess, and we had a lot of extra work to do because we had to do a ton of paperwork to get money back from the government, which we did, and she's been very careful with our finances, and that's why we have such a good rating. So I thank you, Sherry.
Sherry, now that you're here. So last August, when we were discussing our capital budget, the advice that you gave to council, it was my first year, was to borrow less than $1 million. So we actually lowered it to about 700,000. And the capital budget is when we're borrowing money for needs that we need to have the municipality running. And is what I'm having a problem with, is this a need or is this a want? So this money that we're borrowing would take us over the $1 million mark, which you recommended us not to do, because we continuously want to lower our debt ratio, so we would keep the taxes low for people that live here and that are raising families. So I was going off of your recommendation as keeping borrowing low.
Right, so I've been giving basically the same speech and the same spiel for the past 5 years, that yes, absolutely, to keep our totality of our capital spending. I always recommended between 600,000 to 700,000. With the way things have happened since Sandy, and a lot of our repairs are capital in nature, certainly to recommend to stay under the $1 million mark. This is a 2020 bond ordinance, so when we discuss our capital projects and our wish list, our bucket list in the fall for our 2020 general ordinance, this will be brought up, this will be reminded of, this will be considered in the equation in totality, kind of as if it were a line item on the 2020 general ordinance. So we'll be reminded of what we've
So we're halfway,
issued.
we would be borrowing halfway what we want to do in
We are,
Concord and
right,
August.
we're
And we still have to
taking a
finish the
chunk
sewers on Atlantic, and we
into
still
that.
have to do a lot of infrastructure projects.
We
that-
will also have a good, much clearer understanding at that time of how much of an actual commitment from the business establishments, better than we do today. I mean, right now, if we have 125,000 committed, hopefully we may have a little more. So it's possible come the fall that we will have a third of it, potentially a half, and then in 3 years, when the program regenerates itself again, and assumably if it's a success, we would hope to have the same commitment from the business owners.
Right, I'm just concerned with the hope aspect here.
That's the risk, but if we have the commitments that, we have today, once the season kicks in and a lot of the businesses start to trickle back in town, hopefully, if it kicks off, that's the hope that you'll get more of a commitment. But it will be considered and reminded once we discuss the capital ordinance, in August again.
But Sherry, I know I talked to you about this. I mean, we're forming what's called a public-private partnership. And my feeling is we have a number of people who worked very hard to put this together. They put a huge amount of time in it. And they have made a
Part
commitment.
of a lot of the meetings, this
Right.
wasn't something that just came
Right.
about. This has been a 6-month plus.
And you don't
decision.
feel uncomfortable if we were to do this at this point in time. I mean, it just seems like we're going to lose a lot if we don't take this opportunity.
I don't feel uncomfortable about it. I mean, I will also be the first to say I really don't believe we have a parking problem. I mean, I live on Dock Road, so I have a problem parking in front of my own house from time to time, but that's the nature of the game when in a popular resort. So, but with that said, yes, I've been hearing for quite some time, well over a year, that, people have addressed that there is a parking problem. So it's come to the point where there has been so much comment about it that a group of people, successful business owners got together. You have your small business owners, your large business owners. There's a good mix of people in this group and that have gotten together for well over 6 months to discuss these ideas at length.
Another question, I mean, you don't feel that if we bond out for this 300,000, that's going to force us to have to raise the borough taxes, the municipal portion of taxes?
I don't think it'll force us of that nature just because solely of this to raise taxes.
Okay.
But if we continuously borrow over $1 million every year, yes, it will.
Right, I mean, that's where this will come into play when we discuss our capital spending in August.
Or when we want to do the sewers on Atlantic near Kitty's house.
Okay, wait a second. Any other questions for Sharon?
No.
Okay.
I just have a question. You said there's a, Barb Kona, sorry, 100 Northwest. You said there's a 3-year commitment from businesses, right? Are they required to pay that? I couldn't remember if you said that in the beginning. Are they required to pay that up front on year number 1?
2 years.
Over 2 years. So what happens, and I'm sorry if I missed this, if they don't pay during year number 2? You're just out the money, right? Okay. So can you also tell me if you've polled all of the business community or just select business owners?
We've approached about 20% of the business owners thus far, and we've gotten this much money.
Only 20%, okay.
Because,
It's pretty good.
that's right.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Jay, so you've done 20%, which means there's a very good chance that you could be much higher than this.
Well, we believe we will be, yes.
Yes.
I gave a talk at the Southern Ocean County Chamber of Commerce about a month ago, and I mentioned that we might be doing this, and we were talking about the shuttle system. And a number of people came up to me after the meeting and said, I would like to contribute to this. That they don't necessarily live in Beach Haven, but they would like the advertising and that sort of thing. So that was helpful. Would anybody else like to speak? Yes.
Al D'Souza, 416 Amber. I just have a couple of comments. I haven't made up my mind whether this is a good thing or bad thing, so I'm really objective here. I want to talk about 2 things. We keep talking about private-public partnership, and that's great, but we also have to remember that the private part of it gets the benefit by and large, and the public is held up holding the bill, paying the bills. And so the risk is to the public. The second point I want to make is, in response to what Jamie said, is it a need or is it a want? And
Is it a what?
Is it a need or is it a want?
Mhm.
And my thought, I've got an MBA in finance and I've worked in business. And usually when you talk about capital expenditures, you have a ranking of projects that are being considered for capital expenditure. So where does this rank in the scale of all the things we would consider to allocate capital money to? And that's my question.
That's a good question. That's a very good question. And I do think that, we do have rankings and we do talk about it, and we have been able to accomplish amazing amount of things as far as getting things done and getting grants. This is I think it is more of a need, and I think we need to be able to move people around without the commotion and the problem with parking. We have been criticized so heavily about not having enough parking. This is a solution. I think the main criticism we've had in town is the lack of parking. So we're trying to solve that problem, and we do have a group of people that have come forward to say, let's try to help with this. And they have raised a substantial amount of money in this short period of time that they've done this. Now, you're right. I mean, somebody might not. Somebody might renege on their pledge. That happens. We know people that do that. But hopefully, somebody else will come up to the plate.
Yeah. In response, Al, I would like to say that yes, you do rank your capital projects, but unlike all of the other capital projects that you would be doing in the borough, this one has an outside independent funding source, so the money will come back to the borough and to the taxpayers, and the taxpayers will not be out any of it, and this is a group of people willing to take the risk. You actually had it backwards, Al. This is one where the borough gets the benefit of, over a period of years, owning these wonderful trolleys for no cost, and if there's any risk at all, it's the business community that will be out that money if the program doesn't work. So it's quite the opposite of the way you characterized it. This is where the business community takes the risk and the borough gets the benefit.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come forward and speak?
Let me say one thing. Non-taxes, and I guess this is a question for Sherry.
Let's list your address first.
16 Fifth Street, Beach Haven, New Jersey. Sherry, is it not right that we wrote down $4.6 million of debt between 2018 and 2019?
That we decreased our debt, yes.
So we decreased our debt between 2018 and 2019 by $4.6 million.
We went from 12.6 million, I'm sorry, 16 million to
Okay.
12 million.
Is it not true also that we've increased our surplus close to $3 million in the last few years?
That's true.
Is it not also true that we've increased our water utility surplus from about $2 million to $3.5 million today?
That is true.
So our surplus is going up, our debt's going down. It is not true that we have not increased our tax for municipality for 2018 or 19.
Correct.
So our debt is down, our taxes are down, or held constant, our surplus is growing. Isn't that true also that the number you told tonight of having cash on hand of $13.1 million in the borough account and cash on hand of $3.9 million in the water account is very solid and strong for this community?
It's a strong figure.
It's a very strong feeling. The only points I'm trying to make is, and the auditor report said that we're one of the best communities ever audited. We had no audit identification of errors or anything over 4 years now.
No audit findings.
No audit finding for 4 years. So, from a financial point of view, we are well positioned to do this at this point in time.
Like I said, this will not solely cause an influx or a raise in our tax rate.
So the only point I'm trying to make is that we are very solid as a community right now in terms of the debt, our ability to pay off debt, our ability to hold taxes firm, where our surplus continues to grow, our cash on hand continues to grow, and this is probably, right now we are in a very good position to be able to incur this kind of expense. especially if it's gonna be reimbursed by the business community. That's the only points I want to make. Thank you.
And the audit report is available for anybody to read, and I have to say that I and Tom sat through the entire audit report. So, you know, we're really trying to be on top of the finances of the town. So, I mean, 300,000, which we have I figure a 95% of getting that money back. It's not going to be spent by the taxpayers, and again, there's always some risk, but it isn't going to increase taxes or break the town at this point. So I just think it's time that we try something to solve some of the problems we're having.
I don't want to disagree with you, Steve, and.
Oh, wait for it.
Speak, no, please, you have to speak into the microphone and state your name and address again.
Now, this is a 416 Amber. I don't want to disagree with Steve, I respect him a lot. But the fact is, it's not really fair to claim that it's independent because the financing is going to be done by the borough floating a bond. So it's not really independent. Yes, they're contributing, but they're not accountable. The borough's accountable and the taxpayer's accountable.
You're right.
So that's not a fair characterization to say it's independent.
Yeah, you're right, but I think Steve's comment is such that by having the businesses involved in this in a public-private partnership, it gives us the chance of doing something like this that has a very high percent of ability of being successful without, and probably not having risk. And as I say, I mean, there's no 100% guarantee on that, but there's a fairly high guarantee. But yes, that's why we have to do the bond.
Yeah. So we're taking the risk ultimately.
So there is, well, I mean, I think there's a very low risk with the, I mean, I can't, I'm really depending on the knowledge of the business people that have worked so hard they put way more time into this than I have. And I'm depending on their knowledge and the fact that they have a successful background and they understand finance. So, I mean, somewhere along the line you have to have some faith that this is going to work. And I have faith in the commitments that have been made. I know some of the people that have committed to large sums of money, like Mr. Murphy and people like that. And so I really feel that that this is a no-lose situation. But again, some tragedy could happen, and it could.
Sherry, I have a question. What has Chief Markowski stated about the trial?
I was not in that meeting.
Okay.
Chip, you were in that meeting, right? Yes.
And can you, again, do I need to ask them to get up and state their name? Would you mind, just because it is being recorded?
So I know the chief had a lot of concerns with just the shuttle, and that's why we have designated stops.
He did. I'm Chick VC, have two businesses at Bay Village, 830 North Bay Avenue. Yeah, we reached out to Jim, had a preliminary discussion, told him we wanted to coordinate with him how we were going to run the route, where we were going to stop, and he would have final say as far as where to, where not to. So he wasn't opposed or for, but he appreciated that we wanted to coordinate with him, which we do. So, and he did have issues with the trolley stopping and stopping in intersections and being flagged down, and that's why he went with, we have some state guidelines as to where in Beach Haven that the Long Beach trolley system will be stopping, on the bay side, on the ocean side. But that coming through Beach Haven starting this year will only be at those designated stops in Beach Haven. The rest of the island will be able to still flag down the trolley.
So in the borough, who's going to take on this responsibility of the trolleys? Who's in charge, besides the finance? Where are we going to park these? Who's in charge of them? If we're using them on the off-season, who's in charge of allocating a driver? Where does all this come into play?
All the drivers are provided by our shared agreement with Long Beach Township, and Kyle and I work well together, and I have Chris as a resource for parking and fueling and all that, so it's a collaboration.
So where are we going to put the shuttles, the trolley, excuse me?
Well, we're going to talk about what kind of room we have in the new Public Works garage, but it's not built yet.
Yeah, it's not built yet.
We'll see.
And I think, I don't know who it was that addressed that question, maybe Brian, that, or maybe it was, I'm not sure who. Dawn? Jay! Okay, I mean, this is a concern, because that question did come up before, and we certainly don't want these out in the elements, and Jay did say, basically, they're looking into a place off island that they could, if they can't fit it in the public works garage, should be moving soon. But if there's not room there, they'll find somewhere to park these. And we can get pretty inexpensive parking off island. Any other questions? Any other questions from the audience? All right, I would like to make a motion to table this for a short time, so we can have some further discussion. And I know Dan Allen couldn't be here today, and he wanted to be at the meeting, and he couldn't get any internet where he was, so I'd like to be able to reschedule this.
I wouldn't recommend waiting too long because of the timelines that we're under, but if we tabled to Thursday the 13th or Tuesday the 18th, you have to table to a designated meeting time. Are you going to wait until our next regular scheduled meeting, or are you going to call a special?
I think we have to make this, what's the dates we could do this, Sherry?
I mean, or is the
Nancy,
council-
you haven't
are you
closed
available?
public comment yet. Nancy, one comment on that, on this delaying it, then there is a lead time on these trolleys. If you delay it any longer than tonight, there's a good chance you will not get them for the summer.
We'll have to take the chance.
Yeah.
And then you won't get them for August, September.
The 24th is the next regularly scheduled.
So I'll make a motion to table this to,
Nancy already motioned.
I'm gonna second.
We have to pick a date. Nancy, where are you going?
What are the dates that you see possible?
24th.
13th?
No, we got to do it sooner. Could we have a meeting on the 13th in the evening?
I can do the 13th.
Okay.
Chuck?
And I'll make sure that Dan
What's the day?
watches the YouTube.
That's a Thursday, this Thursday.
Yes, I can do that.
What time?
6?
6 o'clock?
Mhm.
What do you want to do?
This Thursday, the 13th? Well, should we see if Councilman Allen can make that meeting, because that's one of the...
Well, that doesn't matter to me if he can make it or not. We'll try.
I think, I talked to him at length today, and he really wanted to be here, and his internet wasn't working, and we can have him come in by phone if his internet, but he does have to watch the YouTube.
So we're tabling, we have a motion and a second to table till Thursday, February 13th at 6 o'clock. Is that correct?
Yes. For me, anyway.
Mrs. Baumiller?
Yes.
Mr. Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Maskell?
6 PM?
Yes.
Yes.
Mayor Davis?
Yes.
Moving on. Ordinance 2022C, an ordinance amending Chapter 13, First Aid Squad of the Code of the Borough of Beach Haven, County of Ocean, State of New Jersey, to require member background checks to be conducted by the First Aid Squad. First reading.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Mrs. Baumiller?
Yes.
Mr. Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Maskell?
Yes.
Mayor Davis?
Yes.
Ordinance 2020-03C, an ordinance amending and supplementing Chapter 212-20H, General Regulations of the Borough Code of the Borough of Beach Haven, County of Ocean, State of New Jersey, to correct consistencies within the chapter. First reading.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Sorry.
Mrs. Baumiller?
Yes.
Mr. Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Maskell?
Yes.
Mayor Davis?
Yes.
Ordinance 2020-04C, an ordinance amending and supplementing Chapter 27, Personnel, Article 2, Personnel Policies of the Borough Code of the Borough of Beach Haven, County of Ocean, State of New Jersey, to include a domestic violence policy and to update the continuing education policy. First reading.
Motion?
Motion approved.
Second.
Mrs. Baumiller?
Yes.
Mr. Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Maskell?
Yes.
Mayor Davis?
Yes.
All matters listed under item consent agenda are considered to be routine by the municipal council and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed. Any items requiring expenditure are supported by a certification of availability of funds, and any item requiring discussion will be removed from the consent agenda and discussed separately. All consent agenda items will be reflected in full in the minutes. Resolution 38, executing animal facilities agreement with Ocean County. 39, authorizing a tax and water rent collector to cancel balances and credits under $10. 40, returning piling bonds. 41, canceling water charges. 42, authorizing to advertise for bids for ice cream vendors. 43, authorizing to advertise for bids for the 2020 replacement of the chlorine contact chamber. 44, authorizing application to the New Jersey American Water Environmental Grant Program for hydration stations. 46, authorizing to advertise for bids for the 2020 Walsh Field Tennis Court reconstruction. 47, authorizing execution of a shared service agreement with the County of Ocean for participation in the driving while intoxicated enforcement program, the drug recognition expert call-out program, and the move over law enforcement program. 50, acknowledging managerial appointments to the Historic Preservation Advisory Commission. 54, authorizing the cancellation of taxes and a rebuild taxes. Resolution 55, authorizing submission of a raffle application for the Long Beach Island Historical Association. 56, awarding a contract to Shore Connection for the 2018 road reconstruction project, Amber Street, Delaware Avenue to West Avenue. 57, awarding a contract to Crest Construction for the 2020 fire hydrant replacement project. And 58, executing a shared service agreement with Tuckerton Borough for the use of a back truck and operator.
Would anybody like to remove any of these for further discussion?
No.
Maybe? No. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Mrs. Baumann?
Yes.
Mr. Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Maskell?
Yes.
Mayor Davis?
Yes.
I have a bill list this evening in the amount of $1,208,812.39.
Everybody read the bills?
Yes.
Any questions, comments?
No.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second?
Mrs. Baumann?
Yes.
Mr. Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Maskell?
Yes.
Mayor Davis?
Yes.
At this time, the Borough of Beach Haven participates in a program called the Community Development Block Grant. We are allowed to participate in the program every other year. That's how the county makes their money go further. It's administered by the county, and they distribute federal funds to municipalities on the biannual basis. And a community that is determined to have low-income areas, as designated by the census, have more freedom in how the grant money is utilized. But the borough only qualifies under one category, and that is for handicap accessibility. So we only have one method to utilize the grant funds in retrofitting existing structures to be handicap accessible. So at this time, we would like to open the floor for any suggestions from the public for any projects that they would like to suggest. We do have to, as part of the application, open the floor for public solicitation, and then I can give you my suggestions for the project application.
Okay. The floor is open, okay? Please come up, state your name and address, and give us your idea.
Lori Anderson, 1001 West Avenue. You said money's applicable to structures. So I'm hoping this will be a structure, but the railings that go up over the dune are all wood and splintery, and the township has done a lovely job of providing those white graspable handrails. So there's a lot of people. I mean, I had a relative get 5 splinters. She's 90-some years old, but man, she still wants to go to the beach. And there's a lot of people like that. So if there's any way community block grant money could be used for graspable handrails on the beach, that might be appreciated by a lot of people.
That's a great idea. We've been putting them up.
Finally have an idea.
We have been putting them up slowly and surely. This would help. Anybody else? Thank you.
I'm just going to piggyback on Lori's idea because it was very good. I know they have the mats, I forget what they call them.
Moby mat.
Okay, and I know they're pretty pricey, but would they fall under this as well? Because they're a huge help, and I know that, you know, not too many places can afford them. Is there an amount that we can get or apply for?
We usually ask around 40,000, and we usually get maybe between 35 and 37,000.
I think we should ask for even more, maybe we'll get more.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Stay around that.
I think Lori's right, that the railings have to come first because everybody who's touched them knows what they're like. But once we accomplish that, I would say go for the mats too, because they really do make it easier. We had a relative that needed to use the beach wheels, and it's tough, even with the beach wheels, which were a godsend.
Yeah, and we've used the CDBG to purchase beach wheels in the past as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else? Nobody? So I'm closing the floor. Let's hear Sherry's ideas.
So, well, we met with Chris Carson and Frank Little, and the two suggestions were made to put in the sidewalks along Taylor Avenue between Delaware and Seagull with the corner curb cuts, and also to look at various corner curb cuts that are not compliant along Bay Avenue, specifically the one at 8th Street
At
that's
the school.
super high.
This high.
So we're going to be looking at those two projects, possibly asking for them as a group project. And we'd like to ask for 40,000, and we would anticipate between 35 and 37 as a grant. So we'll discuss it again at the next, the March meeting. We'll again have another discussion about these CDBG projects. The council will decide which way they want to go, and then we'll adopt a resolution authorizing us to go ahead and make application.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm now going to open the floor to public comment. Again, if you want to comment, come forward, state your name and address. Anybody want to come forward and comment? I know we had a lot of comments tonight. All right, so I'm closing the floor, and now we have final remarks by council. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I took another look at the police report again. If anybody really looks at this, this is a very, very good report. And I continue to say that, because I think the police in this town do a very, very good job. So if you get a chance to take a look at it from the years earlier too, it's very, very nice to see that they're alert and on the job. The other thing too is I hope to see everybody at the dinner on Saturday night, the dinner, so on the 15th. So please.
This weekend.
Support the fire company.
Fire company, we all forgot already. How soon we forget? All right, the 15th. So it's Saturday night, so please. Hope to see you there. Thank you very much.
So, piggybacking off of what Mr. Lynch said, the police department also every Monday and Tuesday night participate in the Police Athletic League. So right now, actually, my daughter is at the gym with the police officers, and they volunteer their time playing sports with the kids, teaching them, they're role models for them. So the police also does that for the kids as well, and they're just a great influence on the community. And speaking of the Beach Haven kids, they just finished their big performance this week of 101 Dalmatians. And I wish Steve was still here to thank him again for allowing us to use the Surflight Theater and having the Surflight Theater come in. And they worked on that for 2 weeks, and the Surflight Theater came in, and for 2 weeks they practiced and they pulled off an amazing show. So it just goes to show that there is a very strong bond that we have in the community with the businesses and the Surflight and the school, and I'm very proud of that.
Here. How many of you went and saw that show?
I saw it.
Yeah, but I saw a lot of you there. I was there. It was great. Yeah, it was really wonderful. And your daughter was in it.
Yeah,
She was cute. Honest to goodness, it was wonderful. It was great seeing these kids. Chuck.
Well, I'm surprised that Colleen didn't ask for hard true courts.
Chuck, I already told you before.
I want them too. And I did huge amounts of research in the hard truth. And it's so much maintenance. Too much maintenance.
Very expensive.
I mean, getting them in isn't the problem, it's keeping them up.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you all for coming and supporting the community. I also want to just put a plug in for the fire company. I'm glad Tom did that. You have to remember that if you really want your taxes to go up, don't support the fire company. Because these guys are volunteer fire people, and they do this out of the goodness of their hearts, and I guess they like doing it. I know they like doing it, but it's a lot of work to become a fireman today. They have to go to a huge number of classes. It's a huge commitment of their time. And I have to say, they saved my house. And when I had a big fire in 2005. So they saved my house, and they are totally committed. In fact, we have a meeting with some of the fire company tomorrow, Thursday, I think it is.
Thursday.
Yeah, and so I just want to put a plug in. They really do a marvelous job, and it is volunteer, and it really is keeping your taxes down. And same with having a first aid squad in town that does a great job. I just went to the dinners for the fire company for the induction of new officers, as well as for the first aid squad. And these people are devoted, dedicated citizens to these areas. So think about joining yourself and get your friends to join. But anyway, thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.